32 questions facing 32 quarterbacks of 32 NFL teams. That is a feature written by ESPN's Dan Graziano, who looked at the biggest quarterback question facing every NFL team. You guys can already guess what some of these are. So, for instance, you can probably guess the biggest quarterback question facing Atlanta, Bump.
Yeah, who's going to play?
Yeah, exactly.
How long is Kirk going to be the guy?
That's exactly right. Hey, how's this going to work out? What's the chemistry going to be like? How long is Kirk going to be the guy? Or going to have a quarterback controversy? A little tougher is figuring out, what's the quarterback question facing Kansas City? How good can Pat be? Can he win a third consecutive Super Bowl? That's not what we care about right now. If we have time at the end, I will go over a few more of these questions and get your analysis on some of these. But I'm going to start with Seattle because obviously that's where we are and that's the team we care about. The question Dan Graziano has for the Seahawks and Geno Smith, is Geno Smith the long-term starter? I'll throw in his main point before you kind of tell me what you think. He says, look, Smith turns 34 in October. We're not talking about 10 more years, but the signs are there. If you want to make an argument, this could be his final season, whether it's you're looking at the contract, you're looking at a little bit of struggles last year. He says the counterpoint, though, is the way he's played. Despite all this criticism, Smith has posted the 11th best QBR in the league over his 2 seasons as Seahawks starter. If he has a big year in 2024, it's not out of the question at all that he could sign a big contract extension next offseason. Just because Seattle's covering its bases by going out and looking at young quarterbacks or considering drafting one doesn't mean they doubt Smith's ability. So if long-term means 5 years, I don't think it's out of the question.
5 years in total or 5 years from now?
5 years from now.
From now. The way that quarterbacks are extending their careers, I think that's a real possibility. Yesterday, I pointed out that he had 5 game-winning drives last year. He has 8 fourth-quarter touchdowns, 4th in the league. He has 1 fourth-quarter interception, tied for 1st in the league. He's thrown for 11 touchdowns when trailing, top 5 of the league. 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in the red zone. That's top 3 in the league. He's put up some numbers that if he were a 24, 25, 26, 27-year-old, I think people are sitting here and saying, all right, we can work with it. We can build off of this. There's something there. But because of his age and just the situation here, I think people are leaning towards more, finding the next guy.
Yeah.
If Geno goes out this year and puts together another solid season, if he can throw for 25 to 30 touchdowns and less than 10 interceptions, 3,000 yards, close to 4,000, I think you got to keep riding with him. You have to keep riding with him because we've seen that that's good enough to get you into the playoffs. And I look at the Seahawks getting into the playoffs the same way I look at the Mariners getting into the playoffs. Are the quarterback, the defense, the offense, they're going to get you there, right? But then you're going to need some offensive performances. You're going to need DK to go for $120 one of these games. Ken Walker to go nuts for over 100 yards and maybe a receiving touchdown. It's almost like just get in. And that's the way we look at the Mariners, right? Just get in, and then things could happen that can be in your favor, and we shall see what happens. It's just so hard to find yourself that franchise guy. So I think, for me, I look at Geno and I go, it's a year-by-year type of thing. Every year he is average or slightly above average, that extends him. Because what that's going to do is it's going to allow the Seahawks to win games, which is going to change their draft position. You're not going to be in the top 10 or the top 5 unless you lose a whole bunch of games. So it's year by year. I can see it happening if he puts together 2 more solid years. Then he gets a bye year to where you're just going to accept everything that he does regardless of his performance.
I think also I'm willing to be a little more comfortable with, I'll call an intermediate or transitional quarterback if that quarterback can perform and keep your team competitive. In an ideal world, if you were to be like, Stacey, you're GM, build your team from scratch, I would have had the number 1 pick and used it on a quarterback like Caleb Williams, and I would have used number 9 on a wide receiver like Chicago did, and I'd be building up this young offense with everyone on rookie deals. That's not where Seattle is, and I think that you can simultaneously know that you would 10 times out of 10 rather have a particularly young franchise star, but in any other case, a franchise star at quarterback. You can simultaneously know that and also know that guarantees nothing. So when we look at the Super Bowl winning quarterbacks, it is heavily skewed with Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady of late. If you want to look at other examples, I think most people would take Joe Burrow over Geno Smith. he hasn't won a Super Bowl. I think most people would take Josh Allen as a young franchise quarterback. He hasn't even been to a Super Bowl. Dak Prescott hasn't been to a Super Bowl. Justin Herbert hasn't been to a Super Bowl. Trevor Lawrence hasn't been to a Super Bowl. The Vikings forever had Kirk Cousins, and they found some success. Still haven't won a Super Bowl as a franchise. Kirk Cousins is really more of like how people would probably compare Geno Smith.
Right.
But like, even when you have that young star, you're not guaranteed anything. So
No.
in the interim, I am okay with Geno, and I don't think that necessarily keeps you from getting to one. I think what keeps you from getting to one is having a bad team.